Alright, so hey VAT, I'm back. In the previous video, we had a chance to set up this document with our layers. We have a bottom layer that is gray, that's for the background. We have a layer that has a photo on it, and then we created 3 layers that will each have separate colors for drawing and painting. We're going to use a stylus. I'm using a bamboo stylus made by Wacom. Looks like this, very simple. This is a very affordable piece of equipment, probably around 60 bucks, if I was to guess. This is the stylus that I'm using, and you can see that it has a button on the side. This is like a teeter-totter button that goes both directions, and then it has a pressure-sensitive tip, so when I draw, I can make my drawings look more like a hand-drawn drawing. So I'm going to start to draw now with black paint in the paintbrush. I'm going to select the paintbrush. I'm going to select black as my foreground color so that it will be drawing with black, and I'm going to make sure that I'm drawing on the layer that I want to draw black ink on. And when I start out, I usually set my brush to about 10 pixels or so, and I use the hardness set all the way up to 100% so that it's more like a pencil or a pen. Now, this layer I'm going to devote to drawing with black. One of the things that I learned right away is that if you don't zoom in, it's very difficult to get detail when drawing on top of a photo, trying to recreate sort of the look of the photo. So I zoom in. I use key commands, Control+. Will zoom you in far enough so that you can see some of the detail and you can start to draw with the tablet. If the line is too thick, one of the things that I like to be able to do is change the size of my brush without having to go to any windows. So I do use the keyboard. The bracket keys next to the letter P. Left bracket will make your brush smaller. Right bracket will make your brush bigger. So you can reduce the size of your brush with the bracket keys next to the P on the keyboard. If I use a smaller brush, I can get even more detail. If it's not working the way you want it to work, there's a huge menu up in the control panel next to this little drop down where you can control the size, the hardness, and the style of brush you're using. There's a folder with like a can of brushes in it. This allows you to go inside of here and click on things like Shape Dynamic. If you click on the words Shape Dynamic, then a little bit more opens up, and you can make sure that it's pressure sensitive. We can work with a lot of different effects in here, different settings for the pen that you're using, or for the brush that you're using. So those are brush presets. And if we go ahead now and look and see what's going on, the brush now is pressure sensitive, so that gives me a little bit more of a hand-drawn feel. When I draw very lightly, it's a very thin, and then when I push harder to put a little more pressure on it, it's able to get thicker as I go. So that gives us more of a hand-drawn effect. One of the great things about using the stylus is that this teeter-totter button, we can use it as we're zoomed in. We can teeter-totter forward with that button, and the cursor becomes a hand. This is like a default setting. You can always change that in your preferences, in your Wacom tablet preferences. But you can zoom in, and you can use small brushes, and when you need to move, you just hit that forward button, and it turns into a hand, and you can click and drag to move your photo around so that you can navigate better. Okay, so if I'm sitting here and I'm drawing, and all of a sudden I realize that I make a mistake, I use Control-Alt-Z to undo and go backwards. I'm going to keep on drawing now, and I'll be back in a moment. Alright, so I've been working along for a little while, a couple minutes or so, to get some of the details on Everett's face. And I'm going to take away, every once in a while I take the photo away to see like what I've captured so far. One of the things that's really interesting to me about drawing on top of a photograph is that it gives you the correct proportions of like whatever you're drawing, say the human face here. But it also allows you to embellish and do some fun stuff. I think sometimes we get a little bit too focused on trying to make a drawing look like a photo. It's not necessarily what I'm trying to do here. I'm actually trying to make a drawing. And a drawing looks like a drawing, not like a photo. So I know that sounds kind of funny, but I want to just talk a little bit about some of the drawing techniques that I use to make shadowy areas when I'm just using line work. Later on I'll have another tutorial that talks a little bit about how brushes are used and blending and using opaque brushes to create well blended colors and things like that. Anyways, I have this thing where I squint my eyes a lot to see how a photo has dark and light areas. If I take away my drawing for a second, you can see that the shadow underneath his nose is pretty dark, and some of the shadows on his face are pretty dark as well. So I'm going to bring back the drawing, and I'm going to use the pen stylus to do some, I did some what is called hatching, which is like just doing lines. And I can also go in here and I can do some cross hatching to get these areas to become more shadow-like, or darker. So I'm building up the values by just adding a lot of marks to the drawing. So I would keep doing this until I was happy with the way that the dark area looks. So I'm building up. It doesn't look great yet, but if I keep working with that and keep building it up with lines, I should be able to achieve that dark area that I want to. Alright. I think that's the end of the tutorial. So drawing with black. Later on I'll do a tutorial on adding highlights, and then later on we'll do another tutorial where we use brushes and we paint. So I hope you enjoyed.